Hello everyone, so I'm here today to do another video on my backlisted series in which I go through a decade of backlisted books and just talk about them because I feel like in booktube we have too much emphasis on new releases, new books, what's the last thing, and that hype sometimes is counterproductive for me. I feel like I get hyped and then the books are not that great because statistically there cannot be that many great books in a year. So I prefer to go back into backlisted books that have been hyped maybe at the time or maybe not, and now it has died down and the actual value of the book is more apparent, and also they are easier to find secondhand shops and libraries, and I think that's important as well to highlight that you don't need to have a lot of money to be able to read great books. So yeah, I have a list of backlisted books. This time is from the 2000 to the 2009, and we just get into it. The first book I have for you is a graphic novel actually, and it was published in 2003, and that's Persepolis by Marjan Starapi. I'm not a huge graphic novel fan, but Persepolis is something different, I think. It's a memoir of the author when she grew up in Iran during the revolution, and you see how things suddenly changed because of the revolution, and then she was sent by her parents to, I think it was Austria, to study in high school so that she could get away from all these very religious rules, and how she struggles there, and when she comes back, like the backward cultural shock. And it's done in a really simple style. The images are very simple in black and white, but I think it really fits the topic of the book, and I think it is able to give the atmosphere, and it shows quite a lot of that society, and I think that's, and the history as well, and I think that is something that I haven't found so much in other books that I have read from Iran. So I think it's a great introduction to Iranian history, Iranian culture, and yeah, I would highly recommend, as all of the other books. The second one that I have is another non-fiction, and that is the Shock Doctrine by Naomi Klein, and that was published in 2006. I have to say that normally Naomi Klein's books get a little bit outdated sometimes, in the sense that she can refer to certain events that don't feel as urgent, but in this one in particular I think that's not a big deal, because she is just giving examples of historical events, and many of them are way before this book was written anyway, so it's more of a historical perspective on crises basically, and how governments use crises to control a population. And I think that's especially also important right now because during Corona times there are a lot of things that have happened in the world that we might not have agreed with, but we were too scared to act because of all of this threat. And it's not that the threat was not there, and it's not that the threat was nothing, but it's how the governments use those threats and that fear and that shock to change things the way they want without us being able to do anything. And I think it's really, really important for people to read this and understand how that works and try to find ways to combat it. So yeah, I really like that one. I mean, I like all of Naomi Klein's books, but this one I think it stands out to me. The next one I have is Sulfuric Acid by Amelie Nothomb, and this was published in 2005. And if you like messed up things, you would like Amelie Nothomb. She's a Belgian writer, I believe, that was living in Japan for a lot of her youth. And this book in particular is about a TV show that is made basically like Big Brother, but do you know this psychological experiment of the guards and the prisoners? So it's like big brother of that. Basically, there is people that are taken from the streets randomly to participate in this TV show, and some of them are made prisoners, and some of them are made guards, and it's about the dynamics of how they change their personalities based on which role they were given. And it's super interesting. Amelie Nothomb has a very nice way to write, I think. And yeah, I really like this one. I read it when I was a teenager, so maybe my mind has changed since then, but I have read other Amelie Nothomb since then, and I really enjoy her books. So yeah, this one is one that I don't hear many people talk about, but I think it's worth a read for sure. The next one I have is Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clarke, and this was published in 2004. This is a big book. It's like 900 pages or something, and it's a fantasy book about these two different streams of magical theory in the UK. And yeah, I have to say the ending was very unsatisfying. I think she was probably supposed to write more books in the series, but it never happened. But I think what I like the most about this series is how quintessentially British it feels. I really like that. And yeah, it was just a good old time. I read it fairly fast, and I really enjoyed the reading experience. I was just very immersed in it. So if you like fantasy, I would recommend you try this one, even if it's a little bit big. The next one I have is The Housekeeper and the Professor by Yoko Ogawa, and this was published in 2003. And this is just a sweet, heartwarming book about this math professor that has memory loss. So he doesn't have, I think it's like, he can only remember things for 90 minutes and then he forgets everything. So he has all these post-its all over his body to remind him of things that are happening or will happen, or the name of things or the name of people. And he also likes baseball a lot, like these baseball cards. And there has been several housekeepers, and then one day this one housekeeper is hired to take care of him. And despite his memory loss, they are able to form a connection, not only with the housekeeper, but also with her son, through math, through baseball, and through just kindness. And it's really heartwarming, and it's really nice. If you need a warm hug one day, just pick this one up. I think you will not regret it. The next book I have to talk to you about is Sworn Virgin by Elvira Dones, and that was published in 2007, and it's an Albanian novel about a cultural thing that apparently goes on in Albania, in rural areas of Albania, like in the mountains. And basically what happens is that if a family only has daughters and not sons, one of the daughters is kind of expected to become a man, sort of like dress like a man, act like a man, and just present themselves as a man, so that they have inheritance rights and the land doesn't go to someone else, because apparently in rural areas of Albania the women are not supposed to inherit the land. So they would become a man for the family, and that's an accepted practice. That's something that all generations encourage, and it's kind of a transgender idea that I've never encountered. And the book is quite simple in its writing, but I think just the idea that I have never encountered before of that cultural thing, it made me really look into it. And I think that's one of the most valuable things of this book, that exposure to that crazy idea of transgender, so that you can inherit land. And people know that these women are women, and then they change, and they just, the society completely accepts that now they are men and they have all the rights of men. But yeah, of course, because they are biologically have vaginas and all that, then they are they're not supposed to be married, they're not supposed to have sex and all that, so that's why they're called the sworn virgins, because they can not do that. So yeah, if you're interested at all in that idea, I would recommend you pick up this book. Then the next one I have is 1,000 Splendid Suns by Khaled Hosseini, which was published in 2007. Khaled Hosseini has written several books. I think The Kite Runner is probably a more famous one, but I personally liked 1,000 Splendid Suns more. It follows mostly this woman. I read it a while ago, so maybe I'm not completely right on all the details, but it follows this woman who was abused in Afghanistan and how she managed before and after wars and revolutions and what happened to her basically, and all the hardships that she went through. It's a little bit like bestseller kind of book, but I think still it's quite engaging, and I think it's worth a try. If you have never tried Khaled Hosseini, I will recommend you start by this. And then the last book I have to talk to you about is Unbowed by Wangari Maathai, which was published in 2009. And Wangari Maathai is a Kenyan, or was a Kenyan professor in biology and activist, and she got the Nobel Peace Prize in 2004, and this is her memoir of how she reached that point. So basically what she did was to try to conserve the nature in Kenya, and she did that by empowering women as well. And she has this amazing organization called the Green Belt Movement that tries to protect autochthonous species of trees in Kenya. And yeah, I love her as a person, and I also love the way that she explains all of these different ecosystems, because she's a biologist, of course, so she understands also what kind of thing do they need to preserve their land. Yeah, if you like nature writing, I think this is something that you should really think on picking up. And then I always finish these videos by something of that year that I also want to read, and in this case it's All Over Creation by Ruth Ozeki, which was published in 2003. And this book is just, I think, about the food system and the seeds we need and we want to grow our food, and how that process is being contaminated in a way. I think it's much more in the vein of My Year of Meats, because My Year of Meats is about the meat production industry, and I think this one is about the vegetable fruit production industry. And yeah, I'm really excited about this one. If you also want to read it, let me know, we can buddy read. And yeah, those are all my choices for the 2000s. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know if you have read any of these books, if you like them or not, or you want to read any of them, if I piqued your interest. And until next video, bye!